Hey guys, welcome back. This week we're going to work on and learn about transport in organisms. So last week we did systems and how the cell helps build all of our systems. Now we're going to talk about how we move things around. Okay. Like always, here's our objectives and our vocab. Vocab is on Quizlet. Don't copy this down. Everybody freeze. Stop writing. Just read this. Okay. In our objectives, what you're going to do is at the end of this unit, you should be able to explain the different types of transport. When given a choice, you should know if something is active or passive transport, and then you should be able to tell me why transport occurs in our body. So why do we need transport? Okay, and now let's remember from last week, organisms need to create proteins. We need to digest food, absorb nutrients, and transport nutrients around our body. We need to regulate ourselves with homeostasis, so we need to maintain balance. We need to be able to grow, maintain our bodies, and repair ourselves, right? So all of these systems or all of these things that have to happen are going to rely on the transport of materials into and around an organism, not just people, but animals, plants, anything living, right? Even something as small as a single bacteria. All right, so here's some examples of how we transport things. So our heart and blood vessels are going to be our main source of transport around our bodies, but we're going to push things into and around the body. Roots in plants are going to transport water up the plant. At the cell level, this is a cell membrane, and we transport things through the cell membrane back and forth, right? That's how things get into our cells to actually be used. Here's more transport of the cell membrane. This is endo and exocytosis. We'll talk about that in a second, but that's like eating things like Pac-Man or throwing them up. Okay. And then lastly, this is a picture of alveoli, right? That's what this circle is right here. Okay. This is an alveoli, which is almost like a group of grapes at the bottom of your lungs. And it's a sac, it's a ball, it's a balloon, let's say, that's filled with air. This is how you get oxygen and carbon dioxide into your body, right? It goes to your alveoli and then it gets transported into your blood system and circulated around. These are different examples of transport in our bodies. So what do we transport? So now we see why we transport it. We need to move things. We can't just eat food and have it sit in our mouths and not do anything. That doesn't help my big toe get any better or fix the cut on my big toe, right? So what are we going to transport? So we transport nutrients, right? These are any substance that we need that's going to make us grow or keep us alive. So oxygen, water, organic molecules, carbs, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids. We did those in the beginning of the year. Vitamins, minerals, those are all things we transport. The other thing we transport is waste products. We can't have our whole body fill up with garbage that we can't use, so we need to somehow get it out of our body. And to get it out of our body, we need to get it out of our cells, to get it to our bloodstream, to be able to get it to the outside of our body, right? So carbon dioxide, urea, cellulose, all of these are waste products, right? And my comic here says glucose levels are low, and then the glucose says, who will alert the liver, right? And that little brown guy is actually a hormone, and he's going to go alert the liver. But this is an example of how your body, right, uses your blood as a main communication method, a main transport method to bring things around and know everything's working, okay? So big scale transport. This is like bring it in. How do we bring things into our bodies, or how do organisms bring things into their bodies? And you have this little nifty picture here that I would love if you could draw in your notebooks, right? And we have a whole bunch of systems. So what I want you to notice before we start, I'm gonna use a highlighter. I don't love highlighting, but because I feel like you can't even see it, but I'll try. So up here, you have the mouth. Do you see that in yellow, right? And here you have the anus or the butt, okay? So we have a mouth to a butt in this generic tube body, okay? So let's start with organisms have to exchange energy, nutrients, and waste with our surroundings. We have to get things in and out. We can't just live by ourselves, okay? So first system that does this, digestive system. Let's look over here. The digestive system here is represented by the tube that's over here, and we see our nutrients. See, I hate that I can't see that. Let's try it with green. There we go. The tube that's over here, this is our digestive system, right? That's representing our digestive system. And this is used to get food in and eliminate waste. If you notice, this is a tube that goes through the body. It's not actually even part of the body, right? It's just through the center of it. We have to transport stuff out of that tube to get it into our bodies, okay? So that's digestive system. It moves things in big, but it's not getting things anywhere after that. We need to be able to still move them further. We have our circulatory system, which he's in the middle over here. The circulatory system is another way we move things in. So this is used to distribute gases, nutrients, and waste. This is how we exchange material between our blood and our body. So our circulatory system is going to be our main transport here. See, the nutrients from the digestive system go into the circulatory system. The waste from the digestive system go out into the excretory system. And right, keep going around. The oxygen from the whole body systems goes out here and it exits, our carbon dioxide exits here, right? So our circulatory system is our main kind of way we bring things around our body. Respiratory system, last one, is used to exchange gases between, actually second to last one, between the external and internal environment. So over this side, this is our respiratory system. It's small, but it's very, very important. We have our carbon dioxide and oxygen. Oxygen goes in, CO2 goes out, right? That's another bringing it in, taking it out, okay? When we bring it in and take it out, our circulatory system still has to take over. All right, so all these big systems can bring in and take out things, but the circulatory system has to transport it around, right? Digestive system brings in, gives it to circulatory. Respiratory system brings in, gives it to circulatory. Circulatory system gives it to this last system. The excretory system, circulatory system drops off waste at the excretory system. Excretory system gets rid of it from the body, okay? So all of these work together to bring stuff into our body. Once we bring it in, we go to our next slide. Now we have to put it away. So this is tiny transport. You brought everything in. Now let's put it all away where it goes, okay? And that happens a couple specific ways, okay? So this is getting things where they need to be. So into and out of the cell, because we know all function starts at the cell. So they must pass through the cell membrane. That's our guard made of phospholipids, right? In this picture up here, we have this picture up here that says, "You shall not pass," right? These are our phospholipids and they're guarding our cell. Okay, so this is our guard way. We have to get through the phospholipids, and there's a couple different ways we do that. So we use two different types of transport. Passive transport, and when you're passive, you just kind of like go with the flow. You don't use energy. This is going to bring things from a high concentration to a low concentration. Passive transport is this picture over here, right? If you throw a rock down a hill, it just rolls, right? If my classroom is super crowded and I open the door, people leak out. It's just how it happens, okay? That's passive transport, zero energy used, all right? The second type of transport is active transport, and that's this picture over here. Active transport, oh goodness, is pushing things up a hill. It's hard work. It uses energy. We're going from a low concentration to a high concentration. This is my crowded room, and I need to fit 10 more people in it. And I'm like, get in my classroom, right? This is when I stand in the door and I say, no, go back in, and I push you back in my room. It takes energy. It's not just letting things flow and go, okay? So active transport is going to use energy. We're going to go from areas that have a little bit of stuff into areas that have a lot of stuff. We keep pushing. We'll go through these examples in a second. Oh, all of this is used to maintain body balance, okay? All right, so next we need to talk about passive transport. So this is one of the types of transport. Because it's passive, it doesn't require energy. Think of passive like you just go with the flow. All right, we move from a high concentration to a low concentration. So if we look at this picture up here, this side has more of these little molecules or atoms, right? I guess they're molecules. And this side on this one has more. So it's going from a place that's high to a place that's low. So that makes it passive transport. It's like the rolling down the hill picture, okay? And it doesn't take energy to roll down a hill, right? There are different types of passive transport. So the first one is diffusion. Diffusion is when molecules spread out on their own just because molecules bounce against each other.
So over here, we have a picture of diffusion, and that's things diffusing through a cell membrane. But when you think of diffusion, I want you to think of like, if you, like yesterday, I was making spaghetti sauce, and my daughter walked in from riding, and she said, oh, what are you cooking? It smells so good. Now, she didn't like walk over to the stove and smell the stove. She said we could smell it outside, right? So they could smell it outside of the house. I didn't blow a fan that way. That was the molecules just bouncing against each other and bouncing out of the house. Does that make sense? Right? If you put ink in water, it diffuses through the water. You don't have to stir it. The molecules just bounce against each other and go from a lot to a little until it's equal. So we're going from high to low until we even out, and there's an even amount throughout the whole space. That's diffusion. Smelling of fire is diffusion. Smelling perfume is diffusion, okay? Facilitated diffusion is when the same thing happens, but it happens with the help of a transport protein. So those are the different types of proteins that are in our body. Transport proteins are one of them, right? And this is going to help molecules move through that membrane, because remember we talked about the phospholipids in the membrane, protecting the cell, right? Because it only lets certain things in. This protein lets things move through, okay? So facilitated diffusion is with the help of protein. And then the last one is osmosis. And when you think of osmosis, I want you to think, oh, I'm thirsty. Oh, I'm so thirsty, because osmosis starts with an O, and when you're thirsty, you want water. So osmosis is the diffusion of water, which we'll talk about in the next slide. So osmosis is the movement of water molecules from an area where there's a lot of water to an area where there is a little water, okay? This one can be a little trickier to pay attention or to like see what's happening, because usually the other molecules in the solution can't move. All right, so because this is still passive transport, we still don't have energy, right? But we end up having this water molecule move, and if you look at this picture over here, to work, if we look at that picture over there, we can see that that blood cell, that first one, is getting really fat because all the water is moving into it because there's less water in the blood cell. The other one, the next one, is an isotonic solution that's equal, right? And then the last one's a hypertonic solution, meaning all of the water is leaving the blood cell because there's more water in the blood cell than outside, all right? The tricky part about water is, think about if you make like Kool-Aid and you make it really strong. Can you take the Kool-Aid powder out of the Kool-Aid? Not really, right? So instead, you add more water to dilute it, okay? You have to think of osmosis as diluting things until they're all even on both sides of the membrane. All right, we'll do a couple things on this week, you'll see. Our next type of transport is active transport. There's a couple things here I want you to pay attention to when you see active transport. First, it requires ATP. So somewhere in the picture, when it's active transport, you'll see this. It's like an energy flash, an energy bubble, an energy star, or ATP itself. ATP turning into ADP because we lose a phosphate. There is energy required during active transport, because in active transport, this is our walking up the hill pushing a rock picture. We're moving from an area of low to an area of high. We have to push these molecules across the membrane, all right? We're forcing something that doesn't want to happen, okay? And usually this would be a pump, or endocytosis or exocytosis are going to be our active transport. So if you see the word pump, you're talking active transport. And if you look at this last picture down here, right, you'll see this is a pump, right? It's the sodium potassium pump. And watch, it shows ATP being used. Our sodium goes in, okay, and then our ATP is going to come by, and we're using a phosphate. They're going to call it phosphorylation. You don't need to know that, but phosphorylated, right? We used our phosphate, and it's making this pump, right? It made it change directions, and now it's letting out the molecules, okay? So active transport uses energy. We're forcing things. And then our last thing is bulk transport. Bulk transport is going to be moving large particles, all right? And it's done through endocytosis and exocytosis, okay? This also uses energy. Endo, I want you to look at these first words, En, and enter. Endo is when you enter, something enters the cell, and exo is when you exit the cell, okay? This tends to look like a Pac-Man, right? We have a cell. I want this to out of here. We have a cell, right? And there's like a bacteria, okay? The cell moves to the bacteria like Pac-Man, and then the cell chomps the bacteria or the food. It goes, that's endo, it goes into, right? These are my sequence of events. I'm drawing with my mouse, it's terrible, sorry about that, right? Exo is opposite. This is endo, this is going in, right? So 1 here, large particle, 2, it goes around it, 3, it's into it. Exo, think of it as puking. The vesicle moves through the membrane, right? It fuses with the membrane, and then it spits out all of its stuff. Okay, we'll do that a little bit more this week too. But those are our bulk transport. It's how we move big things around our body. So this whole lecture was about how we get things into our body and then how we move them around. All right. Make sure you notes are in your notebook. There are a lot of drawings you have that you could do, and make sure you ask me questions if you have them. Oh, reviewing. Sorry, I was ending early. So here's all of our transport. Take a look at it. Look at the different types. Active, pump, ATP, bulk, endocytosis, exo, going into or out of the cell, osmosis, water going in, diffusion, we're just moving through from high to low, facilitated diffusion, moving through with a protein from high to low. So remember, high to low is passive, high to low, and active is low to high. There we go. Now we're done.